Hello everyone, welcome back to Swine Siksha. Well, as of now, previously we've discussed national parks. So today I want to discuss about the biosphere reserves. Okay, so let's discuss what are the biospheres and how many biospheres that we have, and let's discuss some of the biospheres today in this video. So let's see. So biospheres can be defined as a widespread areas of biodiversity, whereas the flora and fauna, I mean wildlife and the plant species, everything has been protected. Okay, and as we know, biosphere refers to the water, land, and atmosphere, like all the three things which actually present and which will help for the life on our planet, and especially which were very good in a different kind of a conditions where they will actually help us into the life support of this area which we are going to make it as a biosphere reserve. Okay, and not only that, biosphere reserves are a great example of community based initiations, okay, to protect the natural environment. And it can include one or more national parks or wildlife sanctuaries. Okay, in a biosphere you can include one or more wildlife national parks or wildlife sanctuaries. Okay, so all these combine to be called as biosphere reserve, so don't get confused. Okay, so protection is granted for all the living organisms, and which there will be human communities where they're trying to reserve and trying to protect the flora and fauna which presents in this biosphere reserves. Okay, so the very first biosphere reserve of the world was actually established in 1979. So the world first biosphere was actually in 1979. Okay, so but before that, the biosphere reserve itself was actually launched in 1971. So the biosphere reserve which were actually launched was at 1971. And after the initiation of this biosphere reserve network, the has been a new biosphere reserve program has been launched, which was called as MAB. So the MAB, which was actually called as Man and Biosphere Program. So this was actually started to launch in the regions of environment protection, which was related to the IUCN, which is International Union for Conservation of Nature. Okay, so the very first biosphere in the world has been established in 1979. So as of now, there are 701 biosphere reserves across 124 countries as of today. Okay, and 21 transboundary sites. So the transboundaries where it will connect with the different continents and the regions of rivers or seas. So the 21 transboundary sites included, and 701 biosphere reserves are there in 124 countries. Okay, so what is the criteria if we talk about for a biosphere reserve? Well, the criteria is it must contain a protected and minimal disturbed core area. So core area, as you could see over here, the core area over here, which we'll talk about. Okay, so the core area of value of nature conservation. Okay, the core area has to be nature conserve 1, right? And the next one was must be a biogeographical unit and should be large enough to sustain a viable populations representing all tropic levels. So all kind of a tropic levels of species and organisms must survive, and where they could have that viable environment to be in it. Okay, next, involvement of local communities and use of their knowledge. So human communities must also be lived there to protect and survive and sustain on those products. And areas potential for preservation of traditional tribal or rural modes of living for harmonious use of environment. Okay, so these were the major criterias that we could see. And Okay, we saw the criteria and we saw what is sphere reserve. But do we really need these biosphere reserves? Like, yes, to conserve biodiversity. Okay, to conserve biodiversity and to maintain healthy ecosystems. Okay, to maintain healthy ecosystems and to learn traditional forms of land use. Okay, so how the nature itself grows into the land without any the help of human, that we do agriculture, right? So that's a human made one. But now here we need to learn the traditional forms of land use, like how these forests have been growing and how a particular species was actually started to grow up and all. So yes, that is how that's why we need, and there are much more things to know. Okay, that's why we need the biosphere reserves for the survival and for the healthy ecosystems that we are being in. Now here, as you could see the picture over here, that this is the structure of a biosphere. Okay, so the very first one was core. So this dark green area was called as core part. So no human activity will be permitted, and most protected area contain endemic plants and animals. So very specific or native for this region only. So endemic is nothing but they are very natural and local, and they are very particularly present or native present in this area only. I mean, in this biosphere only. So yes, these kind of specific kind of endemic plants and animals present in this core area. So there should be no human activity in it. And then we have the buffer zone. Okay, so this surrounds the core area where limited access permit to local people for gathering resources, research, and educational abilities has been given. Okay, so now this, the tiny edge of here, as you could see, the darker green one, the tiny circle or the tiny part. So this was called as transition or free zone. So the outermost zone of all, which is here, this is open for human settlements or resource gatherers or cropping plants or managing forests areas, for intense recreation. So where we started to recreate all this area. Okay, so yes, this is the structure of it, as you could see over here. Okay, so yes, and I'm going to tell you one more facts, like out of 701 biospheres that we have in the world right now, 91 in the world network include mangrove ecosystem. Okay, so the very specified and very special kind of an ecosystem, which is mangrove ecosystem. Okay, so out of 701, 91 biosphere reserves are mangrove based, and out of 686 biospheres, 126 were actually included in rainforest ecosystems. So we have majorly rainforest and mangrove ecosystems, which were really very unique kind of an ecosystems and different kind of habitants, animals, birds and species will present in them. So yes, this is the difference, the different kind of species or a different kind of ecosystems that we have in the world right now, right? So that's why we need to preserve this environment. Okay, so now let's talk about the biosphere. So today I'm going to discuss the very first one, which is Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. So this biosphere has been launched in 1986. Okay, in 1986 this was, and Nilgiri, this was falls in the state boundaries of Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and along with the Western Ghats. Okay, so this is India's first biosphere reserve. Okay, this was the first biosphere reserve, and it is also the World Heritage Site, which was designated by UNESCO. Okay, so this was the first biosphere reserve which was considered under UNESCO, which is Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. Okay, remember that. And not only that, this was the first to be included. Okay, so this was the first one to be included in the MAP program, like Man and Biosphere program. So this was the first one in it again, right? And as you could see, the key fauna of this Nilgiri was lion-tailed macaw and Nilgiri thar. You could see in the pictures. And not only that, it has, Aralam, Mudumalai, Mukurti, Nagarhole, Bandipur, Silent Valley National Parks as well, and Wayanad and Satyamangalam wildlife sanctuaries present in this Nilgiri biosphere. So, as I mentioned, in a biosphere, we could have one or more national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. So, yes, these are the national parks and wildlife sanctuaries present in this Nilgiri biosphere. And if we talk about the tribal groups which were habited in this biosphere was Badagas, Todas, Kotas, okay, Adians, etc. And if we talk about the vegetation over here, so it has a tropical evergreen forests and mountain solis, and we have grasslands and semi-evergreen forests. Okay, and we have moist deciduous and dry deciduous along with thorn kind of forest. So these many kinds of vegetation that we have over here, okay, in this Nilgiri biosphere. So that's why it was considered as the first biosphere recognized in India. And yes, it was a World Heritage Site by the UNESCO. So this is about the Nilgiri Reserve. Now let's talk about the next one. So yes, before heading into the next one, as you could see, those many. So this was the map of Nilgiri Biosphere. As you could see, all the national parks and wildlife sanctuaries has been present over here. Okay, so yes, now let's talk about the next one, which is Nanda Devi Biosphere Reserve. So this was designated in 1988. So this falls in the state boundaries of Uttarakhand along with Western Himalayas. Okay, and the Rishi Ganga River were actually get drained in this or through this Nanda Devi Biosphere Reserve. And of course, it is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it has Himalayan musk deer and mainland serow and Himalayan tar present in this Nanda Devi Biosphere Reserve. And not only that, a transition zone between the mountain ranges of Zanskar and Greater Himalayas is actually present. So it has a transition zone. So the transition zone or the outer part of this biosphere reserve, as we talk in the structure of the biosphere earlier, so this transition zone lies between Zanskar range and Greater Himalayas, so between. Okay, and it is located within the Western Himalayas endemic bird area. So endemic bird area it has. And not only that, 7 restricted range bird species are endemic in this. So 7 kinds of range bird species, rare bird species has been present in this area itself. So as you could see here, the Nanda Devi National Park, and we have Valley of Flowers National Park in it, and the Nanda Devi Biosphere Reserve as we have. Okay, now let's talk about the next one, which is Nokrek Biosphere Reserve. So this was designated as a biosphere reserve in 1988. Okay, and this falls in the boundaries of Meghalaya and Eastern Himalayas. And the highest peak in this Nokrek Biosphere Reserve was Garo Hills. Okay, and the key fauna was red panda. So this red panda was the key species which were present in this. And not only that, we could see other species which is pigtail macaw, okay, clouded leopard, elephant, and all. And the vegetation, if we talk about over here, it has 90% of evergreen forests, and the rest was semi-evergreen deciduous forests. Okay, and Nogrek is the highest peak of Garo Hills, as I said, and the rivers which actually flows through was Ganol, Dareng, and Simsang. So it has Ganol, Dareng, and Simsang rivers, so which actually flows through it. Okay, so the Ganol actually flows from westward of Brahmaputra, so westward of Brahmaputra river, and the Dareng, which is comes from the southern peaks, and the Simsang was actually north to the biosphere reserve. And the tribes that we talk about, the Garo tribe was major in it. So, and we have Banias tribes as well. Okay, and the important habitat, as I mentioned, which is the Asian elephant, was also one of the important species that actually present or habitat in this Norcrest Biosphere Reserve. Okay, let's talk about the next one, which is the Great Nicobar Biosphere Reserve. So this was became a biosphere reserve in 1989. So it falls in the boundaries of Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So here, okay, so and the key fauna of this Greater Nicobar was saltwater crocodile. Okay, and it does have other things as well. So not only that, but the major one was saltwater crocodile. Okay, and the Galathea Wildlife Sanctuary and Campbell Bay Wildlife Sanctuary. So here, which were actually present in this biosphere reserve, and Nicobarese and Sompen tribe, which were actually habited in this biosphere reserve. Okay, and the threat, it has a threatened kind of a tropical evergreen forest ecosystem, and a wet evergreen kind of vegetation it provides. And as you could see, the another one important fact, the Indira Point, which is the southernmost point of the Republic of India, actually presents in it, and southernmost island of the Nicobar, where this biosphere reserve was actually present. Okay, so this was about the Great Nicobar Biosphere Reserve. Now the Gulf of Mannar Biosphere Reserve. So this again, this was also taken up in 1989. So falls in the state boundaries of Tamil Nadu, west coast of Sri Lanka, southern tip of India in the Coromandel coast. So this was takes the boundaries of Tamil Nadu, and not only that, the west coast of Sri Lanka and southern eastern tip of India. So here it actually lies between the Coromandel coast. So where this Gulf of Mannar Biosphere Reserve presents. Okay, and it is known for its pearl banks. Okay, so for 2000 years, more than that, the pearl banks were actually present in it. It's famous for that. And the key fauna was dugong, which is sea cow. So this one. Okay, and they have whales and sea cucumbers as well. Okay, and the large shallow bay, which was forming part of the Lakshadweep Sea in Indian Ocean. So Lakshadweep Sea in the Indian Ocean, where it actually forms a shallow bay. And this was lies to the north, which was between Sri Lanka and India. Okay, and it has a different kind of marine environments, where the seaweeds and the seagrass, along with a variety of coral reefs and mangroves, are actually present in this biosphere reserve. So we could see a wide range of coral reefs and mangroves present in this biosphere reserve. Okay, so let's talk about the last one for this video today, which is Sundarban's Biosphere Reserve. Again, this was also designated in the year 1989, and this falls in the state boundaries of West Bengal along with the Ganga's Delta. And this mangrove area in this Ganga, in this delta, was actually formed by the confluence, of Ganges, Brahmaputra, and Meghna rivers, and which they entered and finally mixed up in the Bay of Bengal. Okay, and this was situated in the south of Tropic of Cancer. So Tropic of Cancer, where in the southern position the Sundarbans was actually present, and this was actually bounded in the west with Muri Ganga, and in the east, so in the west it was be with Muri Ganga river, and in the east which it has Harin Bagag and Raimangal rivers. Okay, so many rivers, so that's why it has a different kind of ecosystem, as we know that. Okay, and the key fauna of the Sundarbans, as we all know, it's a Royal Bengal tiger, and this is the largest single block of tidal halophytic mangrove forest in the world. So this chunk itself was the highest, or the single largest one present in this world right now. And Sundarban Delta is the only mangrove forest where in the world it was habited by tigers. So that's why it was that special. Okay, and it was that unique to get. And yes, of course, it got the UNESCO's World Heritage Site and a Ramsar site, as in the name of a wetland. Okay, we will also discuss the wetlands that we have in India. No need to worry. But as of now, just remember that the Sundarban Biosphere Reserve was also designated as a wetland, being of an international importance. And you know what's specific of this? There are 4 protected areas enlisted in the World Heritage Site from this single mangrove forest. I mean, like in this single Sundarbans only. So 4 different kind of areas has been given the status of World Heritage Site. So what are they? Let's see, Sundarbans National Park. Okay, one is the Sundarbans National Park, and the other one was Sundarbans West region, and Sundarbans South region, and Sundarbans uh, East Wildlife Sanctuary. So all these 3 wildlife sanctuaries along with this national park. So each and every one got the World Heritage Site designation. Okay, so this is about the Sundarbans Biosphere Reserve. Well, that's all for today, and I'll get back to you with another set of biosphere reserves in our next video. Okay, so do follow our YouTube channel and please do subscribe to it, and do check our website in the description box below. Okay, and from July onwards, we were actually provided the mains mentorship, which is our flagship program, and we are very good in that. And from August, we are going to start our prelims cum mains for 2022 batch. So yes, thank you.